Hey everyone, welcome to Crushing Classical, redefining a thriving classical music career. I'm Tracy Friedlander, and today I have Robert Perlick-Molinari from the band French Horn Rebellion. On the show, we talk about how Robert went from being a music major in horn performance to starting his own band and finding his own voice on the horn. You'll hear how from the early days, Robert had an ethos or a way of being that he brought into his career from the start, even when people were laughing at him to his face. You're going to love hearing his point of view on carving out your own place in the world, no matter what instrument you play or what is traditionally expected of you because of your instrument. And a Crushing Classical first, hear Robert play his horn on the episode. He pulls out some jazz riffs and talks about his custom instrument that happens to have orange and pink valve slides. But before we get started, I'd like to thank Fix Music for being a sponsor of Crushing Classical podcast. FixMusic.com is your online resource for high-quality sheet music at great prices. Check out their latest offerings like hard-to-get music and frequently back-ordered parts. Fix also offers unique solutions for teachers and schools buying music. Whether you have a large private teaching studio or you run a music program, Fix has a solution for you. Contact them through their website for more information. Fix now offers free shipping on all domestic orders. And remember to use the special discount link in the show notes to get 10% off your order. And Drone Tuner, an incredible revolutionary tuner app, is now available in the Apple App Store. You may be thinking, another tuner app? Why do I need this one? Let me tell you why. Do you tune with a drone or constant tone coming out of your tuner? Are you tired of that nasty mechanical sound? This app has samples of recorded live musicians for your drone work. It is such a pleasure to tune to a sound that is your exact instrument. Not only that, the visuals of this app are super fast and the reaction time is like no other tuner app on the market. You can tune intervals and chords within a key, so you know if your major thirds are too sharp or just right. And you can tune using vibrato if you play with vibrato, and you can even tune a chord with a friend. People are already in love with this app. Some things people are saying about Drone Tuner. Best app ever. I have never felt more comfortable playing in ensembles after using this app for just a few weeks. And I used the Drone Tuner to tune my college orchestra this morning. Worked great with the iPad 4. Check out our website, dronetunerapp.com, to see video tutorials on how the app works, or check out the videos in the App Store. Drone Tuner is currently available on iOS for iPhone and iPad. Get yours today at the iTunes App Store. The link is in the show notes. Let's get started. Hey, Robert. How are you?
Hey, Tracy. What's up? How you doing?
Good. Thank you so much for coming on. I found you on Instagram. I followed you because I was doing hashtag research, for my own posts. And I typed in French horn, and French horn rebellion came up. I'm like, what's French horn rebellion? So I started following you, and then I started getting answers to what French horn rebellion is. So why don't you tell me what French horn rebellion is?
It's like a way of being almost at this point. I mean, it's called French Horn Rebellion. Technically, it's a band with my brother, but I've called all the music that I've done that's not playing French horn in an orchestra French Horn Rebellion since 2005 when I started the whole let's do something else. So it's the idea that, hey, French horn players around the universe, it doesn't have to be this way, man. It doesn't have to be this way. Let's get together. Let's rise up. Like we don't need to compete against each other for like these small slivers of success of playing Till Eulenspiegel, the low C perfectly. It's like
right.
Let's compete against each other. We can band together and rebel. That was the original idea that I thought. But it's kind of challenging. At least when I started, it was pretty challenging to get people on the bandwagon.
I bet. Because you were in college, right? Where were you in college doing the horn majoring thing?
So I majored in horn, classical horn at Northwestern in Chicago, which ended up being one of the best things places I could have gone. When I was in high school, I was like, I'm going to a conservatory. I'm going to Curtis is where I wanted to go. Mm-hmm. I want to go to Curtis. I want to go to I think that was the only I don't know, but I wanted to go to conservatories, and my parents were like, no, you can't go to conservatory because you're not going to learn anything there outside of music.
Oh, smart parents.
I was like, well, yeah, okay. So then I went to Northwestern, and I ended up taking so many other classes that were really inspiring and thinking about life differently and just like being, like I was taking philosophy classes and classics and like I was doing pre-med actually. I did a pre-med, so I did a bunch of science classes. I was like chemistry, and I learned a whole bunch of really inspiring, cool stuff.
That's
And
cool.
so I was at Northwestern, and I think that was the fact that I went there probably means that French Horn Rebellion would have never come to be if it wasn't for that probably.
Right.
So,
And so what's interesting is that even though Northwestern is a university, it's still a pretty important horn school. You know what I mean? Like it is,
yeah. Well,
it's a
Gail
big
Williams
deal.
is a beast. She's amazing.
Yeah.
She is incredible because she thinks she kind of actually was a French horn rebel in herself. I like to call her the original French horn rebel in a way because first of all she broke gender boundaries with the CSO, where I know it was really tough to be a woman in the '70s playing in orchestras because
Yeah.
there was a lot of that she had to deal with, and then she started doing the horn as more of like a full body thing where you're like meditating while you practice or you're doing workouts, you're getting your air going through your body and treating your body well and how they're all related, not just like punishing yourself to play the right thing over and over. So that kind of full body thing, like using like the Alexander technique is one thing that she's really big on, was kind of breaking boundaries. So I like to think of her as the original French horn rebel in a way.
That's cool. And so you decided that you wanted to like something got into you where you were like, let's rebel against, the fact that we're just being excerpt factories kind of thing. But you said people were sort of resistant to that idea at first. Like people
Oh
didn't
my
want to
gosh.
join you.
It's such a crazy story. Like you really couldn't have written it better. Like truth is stranger than fiction in a way, right? So there is this song that we did. One of the first songs I did where I was like, I think this is going to be French Horn Rebellion. Like I didn't even know what it was. I was just making music on my computer. Like I had like a version of Logic on my computer since I was because my middle brother, the other guy in the band, David, had been interested in music composition and doing like productions. Like he was on a 4-track tape player and they would have keyboards. Like he had a buddy that he would play guitar and they had a mic and they would write full songs in high school on their 4-track cassette. And I just thought that was really cool. So I was like, oh, my brother, is doing something cool here. So I would always get like programs on my computer to write music on it as like a hobby. But when I first started kind of thinking maybe I should actually have a band, I wrote this song that was just like a really dinky song that was just really weird. It was very strange. It didn't even have any horn on it. It was all synthesizers. And I was really excited about it. I was like, you guys, this is a really cool song. And I played it for a bunch of music majors, and then I finished playing it, and they all broke out in unison laughter. Like, ha ha ha! Robert, this is so funny that you're doing this. Wow. Good, great. I hope that goes well, Robert. Just literally laughing, the entire room
Oh my
breaking out
God.
in laughter.
No.
Yeah. So the song, though, ended up being like one of our most popular songs, and it has, it has hundreds of thousands of streams, and we played it all across the world, like fast forward,
What's
and
that
like
song called?
it's called Broken Heart is the name of the song. It has a really funny music video, actually, which I can.
So that was the horn majors who laughed at you?
It was a couple. It was some trumpet majors, some horn majors. It was like a mixture. It was a mix.
See, that's why it's so hard to break free from, this culture. If you do have any ideas, people will definitely be right there ready to tell you it's weird or dumb or whatever, right? And
Yeah,
you
yeah.
experienced that full-fledged when you went for it and played them the recording and they laughed. That's awful. But
Straight
it's
up
nice.
laugh.
It's nice that you were like, suck it, listen to this. Now it's like the highest downloaded song or whatever.
Well, it was like the B. It ended up being the B side to our first single, which was like it ended up like people really like that song, and
So wait,
I
when you
just
say
think
B-side, I heard you say that on Pathways. Do you have records? And one's,
well, it's B side is in like if we were to put together like a 7-inch or something of the single, we always
yeah.
do like the single itself and then the backside. So it's just like, 2 tracks singles basically.
So if you download it, you do get it automatically because people don't usually buy those records anymore, singles.
Yeah, you just get the 2 songs together.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's cool.
But I guess it's just the way of thinking about it. Because like a lot of the terms, ended up being from the record days. They come, they're like antiquated, kind of easily use them,
Yeah.
So that's what that is. But I guess, people, I think the classical world doesn't really like encourage creativity. And in fact, the way that these things are set up sometimes doesn't encourage creativity. Like for an orchestra, like the people that fund the orchestra to keep it going are there to preserve the music that's been played for years and years.
Mm-hmm.
And you're performing arguably the best music from the best people. It's not just like the greatest hits of the 80s, in the classical world. We're talking the greatest hits of like 50 years. Like
Mm-hmm.
between 1850 and 1900, who's the best composers?
Yeah.
And what are like 10 symphonies that we play over that 50-year period? So of course, those are going to be amazing pieces.
Yep.
You can think about the hundreds, thousands of symphonies or pieces of music that are suites or tone poems or whatever format, and like think about how many of those we never play, maybe got premiered once or twice, but weren't hits.
Yeah, and they're just forgotten. And then the people that play them in orchestras, like, you're just a piece of the puzzle. Like, that's where I got to, sort of, where it's like, is this it? Fourth horn on, whatever. And if it's not a fourth horn excerpt type piece, it's just, you're just part of the mix. And you're right. Like the creativity doesn't get to come from each individual musician, really. So tell me, like, as you went along, you realized you wanted to do this kind of rebellion thing, and then I know you had, like, I listened to another podcast you were on called Pathways, really great podcast. I think everyone should check it out, and every horn player should check out that podcast.
Thanks.
Yeah, it was awesome. And you told this story about you had this like shift in your point of view because you didn't get into music festivals. Been there. I mean, like, audition for 4 or 5, right? And you get none, and you're like, okay, plan B. I guess I'm going to go work in a restaurant or something. And you went, where did you go? Tell us about where you went to work and, like, what happened that summer with, like, your realizations.
Yeah, so it was, this was what's turned into a really long time ago, but it's like a really good description of how things happened, which was that I was just trying to be a classical kid, and I wanted to go to one of those mini festivals that we all want to get into, like PMF or whatever it is. And so I auditioned, and I didn't get in anything. And so I was like, oh man, I don't want to pay to go.
Right.
It's like, I'm already paying to go to college. I don't want to pay to go to like Aspen or whatever it was. Then you had to pay.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, why don't I go intern for my brother David in New York? That seems like a good idea. It was like a last option thing. Like, I literally didn't prepare at all. Didn't realize that the internship was like an important thing in college. So I went to New York. I stayed in my brother's 1-bedroom apartment in the living room on his couch for 3 months. And actually, I had an air mattress in the corner that I put a little mini barrier up so that I had like some small amount of privacy. He worked at this music house called Irgu was the name of it, and it was always really cool because I was like, my brother's doing all this cool music in New York, and they were doing a lot of ads. They were doing commercial music for like a lot of MTV, tons and tons of MTV stuff, like little promo spots and all that sort of thing. But in after hours, in the evenings, he would bring in musicians and like artists that were not ad stuff. That was stuff that you would want to do. And of those musicians, like, there was a lot. It ends up, this is so crazy, but it ends up that there was at least 2 artists that would come in regularly that ended up being really, like, nowadays are sensations. One of which is MGMT, and the other one was Ron Pope. So it's like these guys that were just doing it. It's like I'd never seen that I'd never seen anybody do that at Northwestern, like that, just kind of doing it. Like, because to get into Northwestern, you got to have amazing grades. You don't really think about anything outside of getting good grades and like getting to the next step and like being in after school programs or whatever. But it's like for these guys, they were just doing it. They were just making music. They
Just
were
over
like
and over making music, like whether it sucked or if it was good or whatever, they were just pumping out stuff. Is that what you're
pumping
saying?
out stuff, and they were doing it not the way you had to do it. Like especially MGMT, who um, at that time didn't even use any guitars really. They were making all their music in Reason, which is like a software that you can get for it was like really cheap back then, and it had like dinky, stupid synthesizer sounds that were really dorky sounding, and they just put together stuff. They were like, well, this is what we have, so we're just gonna use it, and we're gonna make music out of this. And so I was like, this is great because I don't really play guitar. Like in the mid 2000s, everybody was in rock bands. Everybody was playing bass and drums, and I play piano and horn. So it's like, well, how am I gonna be in a band? So
Yeah.
like, this is well, these MGMT guys, they don't really use guitars. They're using all these synthesizers, so maybe I could use synthesizers and French horn and do something. So that's how it all started. And I came back to school and I started making songs like in between, after classes and all that kind of stuff. And then it became like an obsession where I was like, oh man, I gotta this is awesome. I love this. Like, so I got really passionate about it and still doing it to this day.
So you had that internship and you were like, wait a second, these people are just doing, they're just doing. They're not like studying until they arrive like out of the practice room ready to go for their big job.
Right.
It's like it was like more like in the trenches, like just doing a thing and doing a thing and doing a thing until it gets, you have a body of work essentially.
Basically, yeah. I mean, you just go for it and you just make stuff. And it might not be very good, but maybe one of them will be good. I don't know.
That's awesome. So when you went back to school after that summer, where were you then as far as like, am I going to keep doing the orchestra thing? Like, or were you ready to cut the cord on that and just dive in? Like, where did it come to the point where you knew exactly like you were going to give up that whole orchestra stuff?
Well, I still tried to do well in school and like play well, and I wanted to get better, and I was having fun playing. And I guess when I graduated school, I was just like, well, I'm just gonna kind of see what happens, So like the only thing that happened was I got to be an associate at Civic, so I didn't even play with them that much. But it was the year, so when I was a senior at school, that was when I auditioned. So then the year after my senior year, I was the associate. So I was like, well, maybe they'll call me a couple times, like I was doing some freelance stuff. Like I had played like in a couple weird ensembles, making a couple $100 here and there. So I was like, well, I'm just going to book a tour for French Horn Rebellion and see what happens. That's possible.
That's
so I
great.
just went on MySpace. What actually happened was I was a part-time, I had gotten enough credits somehow at school that I was like a part-time student. So I just started like, I went on MySpace and just started booking shows. And I booked like 30 shows or something the fall after the last year in school. So I just was like, well, let's just go on tour. I don't know. Let's just do it. I don't know what that is. I've never been on tour. It sounds fun. So went on tour, making like $0 at most shows, sometimes $100, But we ended up on that tour meeting people that liked what we were doing, who then told their friends about it. And then we played some shows at South by Southwest that year that some people that we'd met on this tour were putting on.
Okay, and that's a really big music festival, right?
Right. Yeah. South by Southwest is it's not. I don't know how hard it is to get into South by Southwest, but it's one of those things where, it's a good thing to be on, and there's a lot of bands that play, and so people liked our show from that tour, and they invited us to play on their shows. So we played a bunch of shows that year. I don't remember how many exactly, but it was there that we met. So the South by Southwest of 2009, so that'd be spring of 2009, then we met our management team in the UK, who was really connected, super connected. They had worked at major labels for years, and we were like their first management project. So we got swept up in like the music industry almost immediately. So it was like we had our music was on the radio in the UK, and we were traveling out there like crazy, and we were on this Kitsune Maison compilation, and we were really cooking pretty quickly then after that for 2009. And then, then that was just kind of like the launching point to the whole thing.
So cool. So cool. So then you're like, did you end up graduating before you launched into that career, or?
Yeah, so I graduated and then I just went on tour. I mean, I got lucky because I didn't have any student debt, because Northwestern was lucky. I got some scholarship money and I had some money saved up, like my parents had saved. So between the combination of those two, it's like not much debt, so I could just do it. Like I didn't have an apartment. I had no expenses. Like I used our VW Golf that I had in high school, and we just threw all our stuff in the trunk and just went on the road. That was it. So it was pretty DIY. That's kind of when you learn that everything's DIY. But there is no such thing as not DIY. It's kind of like people just say it looks DIY when it's really,
Right. I know. I feel like when you're a music major, you at least I did. I don't know if everyone else did, but they had this idea, I know I did, that like at a certain point your real life would start and everything would be like, I don't know, this like imaginary thing that everything's laid out already for you or something. But you're right, everything's DIY. Totally.
It's DIY. You just do it. I mean, that's like the way to keep fresh. I mean, like we've changed our sound so many times over the years because there's been so much. We're always trying to find something interesting to do, I mean, like do the same thing over and over again, you end up, kind of, you can't do that. You have to keep moving, creatively.
Right. So you guys you play live and then you also create lots of recordings. Like I know I looked on iTunes, you guys have like, I don't know, how many albums do you have?
So we have, basically we have 3 albums that are out. I would consider albums. The first one was called The Infinite Music. That was in 2010. And then we did the Next Jack Swing Part 1, which is like a compilation. So we did a bunch of singles and then released that as just a compilation of all those singles. And then we did Classically Trained. That's the 3rd album, which came out at the end of 2016. And then now we've been doing a bunch of singles again. So we're going to have a new compilation album out sometime this summer.
Okay.
So that'll be our 1st one. So we're currently building towards our 4th album.
Cool. So you talked about some stuff that you do in the studio on the other podcast. It was so fascinating to me. Like you were saying that one song was entirely like just parts of the French horn. Like you used like a tuning slide and some other stuff, and you created these sounds. And then you were describing this like layering effect and all this really cool stuff. And then like, so I listened to that podcast, and then I always watch CBS Sunday Morning. I know like that's totally a show for elderly people, but it's a really good show. And they had the OJs on, those guys? They sang like, they're like this old band. They sing like, people of the world, join hands. That song?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah. And you would know all their songs. And they were getting interviewed, and they were like talking about the studio process and how like they would have a song, and then when it went into production to make a recording, the engineers would strip it down to like, just the basics, and then they would start adding things and layering things and doing the string parts or whatever, and they were just so fascinated by the process. And so it was funny how I heard your interview and then I heard that interview, and I was like, this is a thing. So can you talk about that a little bit? Like what goes into that? I want to know both what goes into that process, how you've come up with cool, new, inventive ways to do things on French Horn Rebellion, and then how does that translate into how you take those into a performance? So I know that's like a really long
basically
question.
the modern musical situation is infinite. I mean, there's infinite possibility, really. I mean, whatever sound that you can think of, you can make it. Or you can make something you never made before. And it's really inspiring, actually, because you can go into these programs. Like I use Logic or Ableton. Some people use like Pro Tools or, like Cubase or whatever. But in these programs, you can do so much. Like you can take sounds, you can sample them, you can reharmonize them, you can you can do anything. It gets really incredible. You can sample sounds that you never even have seen before. you can you can there's no limit. There's absolutely no limit. You can do anything. And so that's the thing that's blows my mind about classical music in a way, or like the way that the current situation is that like on horn, for example, it's like the difference between like playing something beautifully and the difference between it being pretty good is like maybe a 10% out of 100% difference, right? It's like and to play it with really good tone and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's like just to somebody else, it's just a horn, you know?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that sounds good to me, you know? It's like it could be amazing or it could be, you know, but on the computer, it's like horn is one of 1,000, like 100,000 different instruments that you can use. And so what's interesting about today's music, and I think what some older generations don't understand about now, is that because of the incredible amount of sounds that you can make and the palette, and people call it like the vibe, you know, it's like, how does the music vibe, you know? And the way that it vibes is because the sounds can be completely different, completely new, completely unexplored zone. So it's not really about the harmony and melodic content like it used to be.
Oh.
Like when there was the orchestra, you know, in the early 1920s, or jazz is a great example. Jazz is so complex harmonically, and people were like, well, we'll write pop songs with really cool harmony, you know, and that's a way to push the envelope. But now people don't really care about harmony or melody. It's really about like, what is the craziest noise that you can make, and how can you put a bunch of crazy noises together? It doesn't have to be cool pitches. It can be just the regular 8 pitches, you know, that we all use for do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, you know. It could be just that. Or it could be one pitch. Or it could be no pitches. It could just be rhythm. You know, it doesn't have to be any of those things. It doesn't have to be, you know, complex arrangement. It could just be, I have this one really cool sound. Listen to this really cool sound. Do these 4 things in 3 minutes and see what you think, you know.
So was this like a gradual realization that you had over time as the technology changed? Because I know probably it changed a lot since the time you started French Horn Rebellion, or maybe it just a little, I don't know. But like, was it a gradual realization how different things could be from like the training that you did in school? Or were you one day just like, whoa, like there's so much possibility in what I could make?
I think that I always knew that there was a lot of, I think that experience I had with MGMT was like where I just started thinking about it differently. You know, like especially that whole summer, like I like talking about how there was like this lady who wanted like a little spot for MTVU, and I got to do it, and I played horn on it, and it was the only time any live instrument was used the entire summer in the studio, which is a professional music studio.
Wow.
It's like when I was in college, there was always the myth. Oh yeah, you're like the type of guy, like this is what Gail would say to me. It's like you're the type of guy I see you as like a gigging kind of guy. You know, like you're gigging here, you gig there. You know, I'm like, great. Well, where are these gigs? Let's do it. You know? And it's like I think you realize that these gigs don't exist. Like in my 10 years that I graduated, I've had one union recorded union gig, and it was on Miss Mister album, which is like a artist on Columbia. I had one French horn gig in 10 years. Like, admittedly, it paid really good, and I was really lucky to be on it. But she didn't ask me to be on it because I was a really good horn player. She asked me to be on it because I was the only French horn player she knew. I was amazing at horn or something. And everything that I played in the session was all long tones, you know. Yeah. It was all just long tones like that. So it's like.
So what happened with the MTV? Like then you played it on an MTV kind of deal too that summer that you were.
Yeah, so I did a little like MTVU thing where I made a little tag for when like the because it was like a branding identity thing where it was like there was like these videos, and then when the MTV logo would pop up, they would have a little sound to go with it, and I did a little like like that kind of a thing on horn. Like it wasn't even classical; it was like, you know, jazzy kind of thing, and like it was so funny. The lady was like she was like, wow, that's so fresh. What a cool sound. It's just a horn.
That's so funny. That's
but
so
that
fresh.
will probably be the one time that she'll use that sound in her entire career, right? Because it's like, Well, I used that sound for that one spot I did like 5 years ago. I can't really use it again. Next time I got to get something else. So it's like
Weird. So it's just a totally different. We're like in this little bubble in the classical world, and then everything that you're describing is like how it really is, really, in the music industry, apparently.
I mean, I could be in my own bubble too. I mean, because in the bubble that I'm in is its own kind of bubble. But at least in my bubble, people are trying to change the dynamic a little bit, or at least try to push something. So it's I don't. I mean, I know we work with some people that have become pretty well known. I mean, and from what I've seen, at least, this is kind of holds true, I think. I don't know, but I'm not like a Bible on this stuff or anything.
Right.
But
it's cool though. So you do all these cool like sounds and different techniques to when you make your recordings. How can you bring that into the actual live show? Since you like maybe the sounds you're playing are adjusted or created inside of a computer. Do you play along with that recording, or what do you do?
So for the live show, this is something that I would like to get more into, is more like using like really cool live effects for horn. But generally, the French Horn Rebellion ethos on live has always kind of been like, it's really relaxed, it's really fun, everybody come on down, let's dance, let's have a party. So it's never been like a really like virtuosic, like check this out, like this is serious, I'm gonna do a loop pedal and then I'm gonna build this beat and the whole room is silent, like it's never been that vibe. It's always been like, what's up, let's go, like in fact French Horn Rebellion we don't actually do that many live shows anymore. We do a party through our label. Our label's called You Two Can Woo, and I'm like the head of the label there, and it's our studio space in Brooklyn. And we also compose a lot of music for people that need, like similar to Irgu, where we're composing for people that need music for film, TV, video games, all that kind of stuff. So, but we also have a label that we release our own music, and then we have these. It's a very collaborative environment where the idea is like these ad people are paying us to write music for them, or it's a movie that's asking us to write music for them. But it's like, why would they ask us to write music versus anybody else to write music? And the reason why is because we believe that it's important to have the artistic community, like people that are making music, coming in and out of the space a lot, to have like a feeling of community. And so that extends to our live show. So we're doing these live shows where we bring on tons of guests. Like, for example, we're doing these shows this weekend in Texas, not this weekend, but the weekend after this weekend in Texas. We're doing Houston and Dallas. And each show is unique, its own show, where Houston has 5 guest artists from Houston that are playing on it. So Wrestlers, who's done a track with Twin Shadow, DJ Ill-Fated, who's a buddy of ours through Fat Tony, and there's this Myers and this guy named Avery, who's played with like Wild Moccasins and like a ton of really great Houston acts. So this is like, and Private Excitement, who has her own project. So there's all these artists from Houston that are going to play on the show, and we're learning either their song or a cover that they want to do, and we're putting it together in a dance party style. So that's so cool.
So it's really collaborative.
It's super collaborative, and it showcases people working together and like just like a good hang. So the French horn is used mostly as a guitar solo would be in a track. So instead of like that part of the song where it's like, oh, this is a guitar solo, it's like, that's a French horn solo.
That's awesome.
So that's pretty much what it's used for mostly. Like sometimes I'll do but live I haven't experimented yet in the like crazy sounds. Like usually I'll just put them in like a backing track and use that as like, because it's kind of hard to recreate that stuff, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah. So when you do the solo, do you improvise or do you have it pre-done? Like in your head, what you're going to do?
It's all improvised, completely improvised. Yeah.
Had you always been an improviser, or did you develop that, over time once you started French Horn Rebellion?
Well, I always wanted to be a jazz piano player. When I was in high school, I loved jazz. I was a geeky guy, and I would listen to the jazz radio station. My buddies were into jazz, and I went to jazz camp.
That's awesome.
I wanted to play piano. you know, I went to jazz camp and I brought my horn and I played piano. So I was like, well, like, so I did an audition to like place you into where you went. And I played piano and they were like, you're not really that good at jazz piano. Like, I was like, well, I brought my horn. So then I started playing horn, did a little improvisation. And they were like, hey, you're pretty good at horn. We're going to place you into a jazz combo playing French horn. So I was like, all right, I guess I'm playing jazz French horn. Here we go. So I think that's probably how it started. So then I was like, well, jazz is kind of cool on French horn. I mean, it's not bad.
Yeah.
It's just because I don't know why. It doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't. Like, why aren't there more jazz horn players, or why aren't horn players included on like big band stuff? Like,
that's a good question. I know.
You could play first trombone on horn easily. You could also play like third or fourth trumpet on horn too.
Right. Right.
I mean, you could sit in obviously and transpose. I used to do that a lot in high school. I used to sit in with the jazz band and transpose the whatever trombone part or whatever they needed, and I would just kind of fill in.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So I think that's a really, I mean, that's something to think about. I think classical musicians just tend to stay in this like one thing, and it's not part of the culture to branch out and explore at all.
Yeah. Well, that's what's cool about this horn actually, is that this horn doesn't really sound like a horn because it's a single B flat. So
look at those colors too. It's awesome.
The colors are really cool. This is like a crispy horn from the Crispy Factory. It was made for French Horn Rebellion, which is pretty cool. And it doesn't really sound like a horn. It sounds more like a trombone. It's really, really it's got this big bell. It's just like as big a bell as you can get, basically, and as tight of a wrap as you can get. So the idea is to go as high and loud as possible.
Did you pick the colors?
That doesn't really work. But it's really cool. I also haven't played it yet, so I don't know if that's like peaking over there. Like, it doesn't really sound like a horn, right? It sounds like something else.
It has a horn-like quality. I mean, it's probably hard to tell through Skype, but it's cool. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's kind of like it has a horn-like quality, but it's not quite.
Like you might not want to play Brahms 3 on it or something.
No, I don't think so. I don't know. I forgot what Brahms 3 sounds like anyways. What was that? What's that one? Oh, yeah. Is that right? There we go. Yeah.
Yeah, just jazz it up a little bit.
Something like that?
Yeah, you're definitely doing that on your next show. Just like doing some Brahms quotes.
Well, actually, a funny story is we were on this tour with this French act called Yell years ago. And they have this song called Accords de Garçon. They're like really popular all around the world. And so on that tour, we were playing for probably like 1,000 people every night. I think we did like 20 or 30 shows with them. It was a really, really big tour. And we were direct support. And every show went great as far as like technically speaking. Like none of the computers broke down, none of the synthesizers broke, nothing happened the whole tour. And then we get to Los Angeles and we're playing at the Henry Fonda, which is like, I don't know, 1,500 people maybe, sold out. Like, we're going on stage, ready to go. My brother starts to play the computer. Our show used to have this like really epic intro where the song would like start slow and then get faster and faster and faster, and then the beat would drop. And the beat dropped, and it was like, the computer just like fried right on the beat drop.
Oh my God.
And so we like looked at each other and we're like, oh God. And then we're like, oh, that was on purpose, everybody. Let's try it again. And then we did it again, and then it did it again. So we were like, oh boy, you got to restart your computer, basically. So I was like whipped into it. I was like, all right, everybody, here's the deal. A lot of people don't think that I play the French horn, even though I'm in French Horn Rebellion. So we're going to start the show off a little differently today. I'm going to ask you, the audience, name some classical composers, and I'm going to play it right here, right now.
Oh my God, what did they call out?
It was like, I don't remember exactly. It was so long ago. But I remember that somebody yelled out, Tolstoy. And I was like, that's not a classical composer. Tolstoy. The writer. What is that? So anyways, I think I played like Strauss or Mozart or whatever. And then we did the show, and the show went fine. But afterwards, we were so bummed out about it because it was L.A. Like that.
Yeah.
We were like, we're going to be laughingstocks. Like we showed up, we had this huge opportunity to crush it.
Yeah.
And we played horribly. And then like the next week, there's a review in the Hollywood Reporter, which is like a 3-page review about the show, of which 2 pages are about French Horn Rebellion and how cool it was that we were legitimately classical French horn players.
Oh my God, that's amazing. That is the best story. I love that.
It's one of those things where that's what I'm saying, though. That's what it is about what's weird about like music in general, or just like especially this world, is that you literally never know what people will be interested in. Like case in point is this the video on how you discovered us. Like I have been like resisting hashtags for years because I'm like, I don't want to do the hashtags, blah blah, and literally the second post that I do hashtags on was that natural horn video, because I play natural horn with my buddy Yoni sometimes. That was the second video I ever did hashtags on, and then it got over 1,000 shares on Facebook just on its own. Yep. And so I would have never thought that video would be a video that would get so much interest. Like it arguably had the most viral like interest that we've ever had on any of our stuff, and it was natural horn.
Yeah, that's so cool. And you know what? It's funny because I think it's sort of like the early music thing is sort of getting a resurgence right now. It seems like a lot of musicians are going back to early instrument versions of what they play. And so I know several people who are playing natural horn and playing in early music. And then you rip out this killer solo on the natural horn, and I was like, yeah! And it's true. It's so amazing that that's how I found you too, through a hashtag.
Well, I think that natural horn is kind of French Horn Rebellion ethos, because I think my buddy Yoni got into it for the same reasons that I got into doing what I'm doing, and it's because natural horn, there is so much pressure on horn players to not miss notes and to be like perfect and to perfect. And the reality is that we come from an instrument that is almost impossible to play perfectly, and that you're going to end up having to you're going to have to live with things not being perfect. And so it's almost like for him, I think it was definitely like a catharsis, to be like, I don't have to hit every note. Like when this music was written, people were missing notes. Like when Beethoven was writing, he didn't even write it for this horn, not this horn, but that, like the regular double horn or whatever.
Right.
Beethoven was writing for these natural horns, which are like really wacky and very like quirky instruments.
Exactly.
Like, there is no like, the fact is you have to play your hand. Some notes will sound like not the same. Totally.
Yeah, exactly. And I love that you keep bringing up that you have an ethos, like, and that there's like a whole kind of, I don't know, ethos, I guess is the best word for it. I was going to say mission, but sort of like that, where you guys have like a clear vision for what and why you're doing what you're doing. And so if you can sum it up, like, in a nutshell, a message to classical musicians, like maybe what they don't see because of just the place they're in. Could you do that? Like what's something that they're not seeing, that they're missing, that they could be seeing about like the world at large, or creating music on a whole?
Well, I think that the answer to that is that because of the way the internet is now, is that people really value individuality. And so I think, but whereas the classical world, you really want to fit in, as in like you really want to play it the best you can, the way that it's supposed to be played. Yeah. And so the problem is that some people, maybe that's their calling, is to be able to play it perfectly and to recreate these things. But for most of us, I would assume, like, people the general public is more interested in who you are as a person and what you're interested in, and
Yeah.
like what makes you who you are, and tick, and like what like the fact that maybe that you really like, I don't know, something random like that you like to go kayaking. I don't know. You're a fan of like German shepherds. I don't know. You just like certain things. Like you're
Yeah,
a
something
person.
that makes you
Everybody's
unique. You're a horn player plus, like, or, something else that makes you not like the other guy behind the screen who did the exact same thing. Like, I think
right.
that's what brings us down, like everybody down, is that like your thing is that you go behind a screen and you just have to do the same exact thing that the person before you did, but just better, and there's
Well,
no.
yeah, you lose your individuality completely behind the screen.
Mhm.
When you're behind the screen, you're faceless, you're personalityless. It's just your instrument.
Yep.
And I think that is its own thing, which is really cool. But I think most people are interested in your individuality as a person. So,
Yeah.
like as far as making music, it's like I always recommend to horn players to at least get a basic knowledge of like Ableton or Logic, or Pro Tools, like whichever one, and to get a basic knowledge on how to record yourself playing horn, and then not just to be like try to record something perfectly, but instead let me record something and then mess with what I just played, like, and maybe there'll be something cool there, like there's a couple people doing it already. There's like the F Horn Patrick guy, which I've never seen him, but he has like a ton of loop pedal stuff on horn.
Okay.
There's then there's Rock Horn Project, which is the guy that does the pathways.
Yeah,
And he's got
Adam. Yeah. I'm
stuff.
going to link all
Yeah.
this stuff in the show notes for people so they can check it out too.
So there's people doing this stuff, and people are interested in this stuff because it's unique. Like for example, like for F1 Patrick, it's like he's doing. People are interested in this because the way that his videos come together. It's just incredible to see a guy playing horn and playing all the parts on a loop pedal of songs that they know, and doing it with cool, like he does his shots really well, like the lighting's cool, and it's like they're engaging videos, and people that don't play horn are like, they'd see it, they're like, what a weird instrument, first of all.
Yeah.
That's cool, and a quirky weird instrument that is playing a song that I know, like that's interesting to people. But it is, in a way, it is his personality, is that he is a quirky weird guy that plays horn that is also interested in these other things. And it comes across like he's able to make something that is a very good representation of who he is. And I think it's really challenging, and it takes years to be able to figure out how to make a product that actually shows in an honest way who you are. Because like to have the clear communication between like, two people is so hard. Just to say like, let's go down to the end of the street. Like that's really hard. That's hard. Like, which street? Are we going to go to that street or this street or that street? Or maybe you pointed the wrong way.
Yeah.
Just simple communication between two people is so difficult. So, like, the ideal of being able to communicate somehow an ideal version of yourself through some kind of creativity to somebody else is really, 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 really hard. And it takes like a life's work to be able to do it. So that's what I would say to a horn player or a classical musician, is like maybe starting the path on that journey to like start figuring out a way. Like, do you feel like when you play horn, is that like a one-to-one communication of what you're feeling? Is like, because jazz musicians are really good at that, right? They go like ba ba doo ba da ba boo da or whatever. Like they play exactly what they're thinking.
Yeah.
They change it at any time when they're speaking this language and they're talking to each other. So it's kind of like that, but not necessarily jazz. It could be anything.
Right.
That's the internet. Technology. You can really do anything on these things. So
That's great. That's great advice. I love it. So you mentioned your Texas tour. What do you have anything else you want to promote?
Yeah, so we have a new single out this week called Rooftops. Not super horn heavy track, unfortunately, this time. But that presentation was our last single. That one had tons of horn on it, tons.
Okay.
And then we have this tour. So we're playing in London, we're playing in Sheffield and Manchester. We're doing the Midwest, Chicago and Milwaukee, and then we're doing Texas, Houston, and Dallas. there's going to be more New York dates announced soon, and there's going to be a West Coast thing, which is not yet announced, but it is coming.
Okay. And where should people people find out about that tour? On your website, or is it best to follow you on Instagram or Facebook? Where do you put out the blurbs about the latest thing that's happening with French Horn Rebellion?
If you go to FrenchHornRebellion.com, all of our socials are on there. You can follow us on whatever your favorite one is.
Okay.
And we keep pretty much all of them somewhat updated, so you will inevitably find out about things somehow. We have a mailing list and all that kind of stuff too if you want to sign up.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Robert. This was so much fun. Thanks for coming on the show and telling us all about your awesome project. And it's awesome.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we'll see you soon, I'm sure. If you're in New York, let me know.
I for sure will. Awesome. Thank you.
Anybody out there in New York, let me know.
I'll see you next time. Bye.
Okay. Bye.